You
I'm
counting
assuming
down
this
like we
is
can't cut
pre-show
this?
stuff.
Yeah.
Like we can still chit-chat here, let folks come in, and you'll
Your
cut out.
countdown's not going to ruin. I asked the man a question. Screw your
Yeah.
countdown.
Yeah, no, this is, this could be the beginning of an episode, the leading part.
The beginning
never
of
know.
a beautiful friendship.
Catch
That's
it all.
right. I'm actually writing the
All
intro right now.
There
So go
you
ahead.
go.
Hey guys, I'm Matt with Voltner Woodworking and your host of the Maker Lounge podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us in the lounge today. I hope that you enjoyed the first few episodes of the podcast so far. Today, I've got a couple guys who make my audio sound like I'm recording in a fishbowl. These guys have way more experience behind the microphone than I have behind this beard. So, Joseph, meet Dean. Dean, meet Joseph. You guys haven't met each other. Dean, you're in Houston. Joe, you're outside of Texas, so that makes you a foreigner.
A Yankee.
Yeah. On a completely different time zone. Like as you've been sending me all these times for phone calls, I'm like, all right, let's do it. Waiting for another hour for you to call and show up. My people with these central time zones. We're in America. It's East Coast, New York, or nothing, people.
Well, it's been great having you on. Dean, ready to continue our conversation?
Yeah, that's
So,
where the
Dean.
delay and echo comes from, because you guys are right beside each other, and all of my audio has to make it to the satellite carrier pigeon, then back down. So this is going to be interesting for the folks listening. I'm just going to keep talking, and hopefully one of them just going to butt in.
There you go. So, Dean, why don't you why don't you give an intro on yourself, your elevator pitch, so Joe can learn a little bit more about you.
So, Joe, my name's Dean Duplantis. I'm in Houston. Like Matt alluded to, I'm a general maker, a hobbyist. I have a full-time job, so I do this as a passion. I have a shop in the back of my house, very machine heavy, a couple of CNCs, a couple of lasers, but I also have I have a metal lathe. I do welding. I do a lot of woodwork, get into plastic, just whatever I'm fancy. I mean, the benefit of having a full-time job is whatever I'm interested in, I can just go buy. So it's a really liberating type situation. As Matt alluded to, also, we do have a podcast, if I can plug it, the Making Our Way podcast with Austin, the High Caliber Craftsman, and Christy from Twisted Twine. That's been a really fun experience. And I was talking to Matt earlier. I think that's where our journeys started to venture apart, is I dove more into the podcast, that production and that effort, and less into my own personal stuff. So if you haven't seen me post a lot, I don't. I work on the podcast, and then when I'm in the shop, it's for my own therapy. I think my claim to fame, for anyone who does follow me, is during COVID, I got really big into branding stamps. I love branding. Listening, I'll talk about the T-shirts. I know Matt has all kind of hats. I love branding, and I wanted to make myself a stamp so I could start branding boxes and packaging. And I tell people this all the time. Sometimes the final product is not what you think it's going to be. My product was not a cutting board. My product was not some other thing that I built. It was giving other people the opportunity to brand their works. And so in 2020, in the first half of 2021, I did about 450 stamps for people all over the world. I shipped things to Europe, Canada, Australia, and then mostly in America. It was really enjoyable seeing people get excited about their brand and the ability to put it wherever they want. So that was my big thing, and that's kind of what I'm known for.
Yeah, and 50 of those 450, I think I had made.
Yeah, Matt and I had a wood butter for stamps deal going on, where he would drop wood butter off in my mailbox, and I would stick stamps behind the bumper of his truck.
Yeah.
So what are the stamps? Are they branding like steel that I heat up with a torch and burn the crap out of things?
No, so and that's where this came from, is I bought a branding iron, and I struggled terribly with the branding iron, because you would spend all this time creating something, and then the brand would have a cold spot, or it would roll, or just something would happen, and you couldn't transfer that brand. And the heat only goes on to certain materials. It does a great job on some materials, but it's very limited. So I made a rubber stamp, and what the rubber allows is any kind of ink you want to get your hands on. I do boxes and packaging, sticker swaps. I do address stamps. But I also have done T-shirts and soft goods. I just made some dot bags we throw a little camp called High Caliber Camp. We do it right after Maker Camp in Virginia. It's a blacksmithing event. And I made dot bags for everyone, and I made a stamp for the High Caliber Camp logo, stamped the bags with that, and then waxed the canvas. So I've made some that were 8x8 for people who wanted to do T-shirts. I can do up to, the rubber comes in A4 8.5 by 11. So up to that.
Okay.
I don't like going that big because it's too much. It's a lot on the laser, but
Yeah.
I'd say 2.5 inch is a good size for a stamp, and I love making them for people.
I want to do
Yeah.
that. I'm on my 4th laser right now, and I'll pick your brain here in a little bit to get those stamps. So essentially you're buying the A4 sheet, you're doing the negative of whatever, and you're gluing that rubber to another piece of wood to stamp.
Yeah, and I'll tell people if you want to make your own, there are no secrets here. I will tell everyone exactly what I do, because in the end, what you're never going to get is the experience I got learning to that point. So if you just want the final product, that's fine. I don't care. I'll tell you exactly what I do. It's A4 rubber, laserable rubber. I have a CO2 laser that I mark these off on. I have a YouTube video that I go step by step, so it's all there. There are some tricks. One was a backing pad of some nature. So if you just do rubber on wood, you don't get good relief when it comes to something that's not perfectly flat or something that gives, like a box. So I actually use the lining mat that you would buy for a drawer lining. That's what I put the rubber on that foam, and then I attach the foam to the wood block. The other tip is when you get into fine detail, long straight lines, thin letters, those can deform under pressure. And so using Illustrator, there's a technique, if your laser is capable to do it, where you can do a ramping. So it's almost like a mountain, and you're only stamping the peak of the mountain. And that support prevents the deformation for thin lines. And that's what's exciting. I look at my first stamp that I made for myself, and it's a giant piece of crap. And I look at some of the stuff that I've put out in the last year, and it's night and day, and they just hold up. I have friends, Uncharted Customs. I looked today; he's got 88,000 followers on Instagram. I made him his stamp when he had 400, and that dude has sent so many people to me because he stamps everything, and people see it in his videos. So that it's been a fun journey, and it's been really fun getting to know people that way. Joe, what's your story?
So I've got a weird story that's very similar to very many people. I tried to do everything myself and decided to buy tools to do everything myself. And by the time I realized I can't do everything myself, I had all the tools. So I'm kind of forced to do everything myself. Otherwise, my wife is right, and we never want that to happen. So I guess I'll better back up and say, here's why I'm here tonight. I have no idea. Why am I here tonight? No.
Why did I invite you?
I have a background in video production. I have a background in video. I'm trying to figure out how to summarize this into an elevator speech. But I'm a maker. I used to design maker spaces for architects, and how I got into maker spaces was in 2010. I was working at Turner Broadcasting in Atlanta. I worked for Adult Swim, Cartoon Network, CNN, TBS, TNT, all that sort of stuff. And we had a maker space on campus. And I built an arcade for Adult Swim, and we had an actual maker fair that was a licensed maker fair on campus. We had a maker space in the mansion that is from old Turner films, Ted Turner's mansion. We had a makerspace on campus, and I fell in love with making. And this was right around 2009, 2010. My claim to fame is in college. I went to college late in life. I didn't care about it. I graduated high school with a 1.0 GPA, but I had this week in 2005 where on Tuesday I got laid off. On Thursday, my fiance left me. On Saturday, my dad told me of his terminal disease. And the next week, my roommate joined the Army. And I'm like, all right, God, you're trying to get my attention. I give up. Whatever it is you want me to go do, I'll go do. Visited Western Carolina University, so I'm in the Charlotte area. Never knew you could get a degree in TV, and they had a broadcast program and a motion picture program. So this was in April of 2005. I start that August, and ended up building the campus TV station out of what was a PowerPoint channel. I had a cooking show, a travel show, a game show. I sold advertising to the apartment buildings. I had to compete with cable, and this is right as HD was happening. and I put the cooking show onto an iPod Classic using iTunes U. Sony found out about the TV station, the college TV station. I got to work for them at the NAB conference my senior year, and a group from Turner found out about me doing the iTunes hack and about me putting a show onto an iPod Classic. This is in spring of '08, the year after the first iPhone was announced. Well, lo and behold, there was a VP there who had this weird idea that people should be able to watch TV on their phone. I had my elevator speech that was a little shorter than this one. And a month after graduation, I was in Atlanta working on the TV Everywhere project. April of 2012 was my big, yay, we're done. I did 560 episodes of Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, and CNN shows on Netflix and Hulu. So if you've watched Rick and Morty, Johnny Bravo, Powerpuff Girls, or Aqua Teen Hunger Force on Netflix or Hulu, I made those videos like 12 years ago. Oh, wow. And I was heavy on the engineering side. We had the makerspace on campus, and many of us are film school kids. And, you know, you're working in this tech environment. We would shoot shorts just for fun to keep up our skills. Well, nobody wanted to watch 5-10 second clips, so we kind of quit that. Now here we are 10 years later. I would have made a killing on Instagram. In a couple years, I automated myself into boredom, decided to leave because my daughter noticed that I was gone because I was doing a lot of Adult Swim work, which is 10 at night till 6 in the morning. Took a leap of faith, moved back to North Carolina, and started my production company. But I have a passion for teaching. I would teach in my maker spaces. I teach MIG welding and sewing and 3D printing and all that sort of stuff. Well, I started teaching video production in the local community colleges here in the Small Business Center. And so I developed this 6-night course for small businesses to teach video production to them. Well, I had still a passion for makers because I have another business called Tinker It, where I design maker spaces in STEM classrooms, like I was working with architects. Well, I decided, why not start helping other makers on YouTube? So instead of focusing on local small businesses, I started going to conferences to find makers who want to do this. February of 2020, right before the pandemic hit us here, I'm at Workbench Con watching all these woodworkers teach each other video production. And there were a couple of really good classes. Jason Bent was one of them. I learned a lot from him, but I also got to see how makers were teaching each other things. And I started shaking my head like, guys, you're doing this the most difficult way imaginable. And that's when Kristen, who puts on Workbench Con, asked me to do my boot camps at Haven, which doing them during the beginning of the pandemic was the weirdest experience because they didn't have it set up yet for Zoom where I could get feedback. So I had to do a 2-hour boot camp with no audio, no feedback, just staring into a webcam. Now, luckily, I had built, before the pandemic, I had built a 6-camera studio here in my office with PTZ cameras. I'm an Extron programmer, so I programmed the PTZs. As I walked around, I had pressure sensors in the floor, and it would recall presets on the PTZ. And so I'll show it to you here in a second that there's one overhead if I need to show storyboarding. There was another one if I'm showing how to set up a tripod. And then I had other cameras as wide and tight shots. So as I'm teaching folks, I'm just sitting here punching up different cameras to make where they're remote feel like they're here with me as much as possible.
Wow.
That's going to be the next Woodpecker release. Woodpecker Tools is going to come up with some kind of maker camera jig that's $6,000.
Yeah, exactly. It was one of the best classes that I took when I was at Workbench Con, and that's the reason why I wanted to have you on to talk about this topic, which is production and anything from start to finish. And I know it's going to be tough to cram all this into a few different episodes, and so I really want to encourage people to check out your channel, because you do a lot of your teaching there, as well as some classes that you hold, and I think you do private classes, private teaching as well, and we'll do reviews of people's channels and kind of guide them and shepherd them. And I know you've done that a little bit with my content as well, giving me some feedback, which has helped. So kudos to you. And I know that Dean is totally geeking out right now when you said the pressure switches in the floor. Dean is a tinker. He's the male version of Tinkerbell. And because I think he kind of gets into a little bit of everything. You mentioned sewing. Dean does a bit of sewing as well. So, yeah, Dean.
Yeah, the tagline on my logo when I got rid of the Made by Dean, it's modify everything. My wife says it's ABM, always be modifying. Everything I buy, the first thing I'm like, how can I take this apart and change something to where it's mine? Yeah, Matt alluded to my early podcast setup, and we'll get more into it when we get to equipment. But I wanted a certain style reducer whenever I was hanging the Yeti mic. And so I got a piece of brass and machined a reducer to where it fit what I wanted and the kind of drop I wanted. And that was the saddest thing when I switched to the Shure mic. I don't have that reducer in use anymore, but I'll just machine another one, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is that because that you are resourceful, or you're an out of the box thinker? What's your driver behind a lot of what you do?
Yeah, so I think it's the way my brain works. It's constantly in motion, and so I'm always, it's kind of like, when the Terminator has that view and it's like going around and there's all these numbers running. I mean, that's really how I see things. And so I walk in, and the first thing, it's like, is all this optimized? What can I change? And it's like that with everything. I mean, I take something out the box and it's like, oh, this guard's in the way, or I need to switch to a different style, toggle on this, or just anything that I get my hands on, I want to modify. And the other thing is, a lot of goods that we consume are not made for me. I mean, I'm 5'5" tall and almost that much round. So I go buy clothes. They weren't designed for somebody who looks like me. And that's just where it starts. I mean, everything, tools are designed for a prototypical size person who has prototypical size arms and does things prototypically, and we're all unique. So I think it's your own, it's not a burden. It's a obligation to change these things to make them fit the way I want them to operate. I mean, when Marshall designed the speaker that I have on my bookshelf, they designed the plug a certain way because that's how they prototypically saw it was going to work. Well, that's not where I put it. Where I put it didn't have that kind of clearance. So I had to remake that plug to fit what I was trying to do. And I think that's just what it is. I have a 1987 Porsche. And I love it. It was when we moved to Texas, that was kind of like our thing. Like, look, if we move, I get to get the car I always wanted. And the most freeing moment was I got in a wreck. Somebody hit me. And I was so upset. Like, I can't afford to fix this car. But it was also so freeing because I went, well, now I can do whatever I want. And it was when I realized, like, this is mine. This is not a museum's car. This is not a car lot's car. This is my car. So if I want to spray paint the hubs a different color, I can do that. If I want to rip out the entire leather interior and put in a square weave carpet, I can do that because it's mine. And I've taken that approach to everything. Just because the Lego directions say this is how it's built, if that doesn't fit on my shelf, I'm changing it.
You rip that void when open sticker off as soon as you buy something.
Oh, yeah. I told you I have a Glowforge. I cut the bottom out the second week I had it.
Yeah, safe to say you've never had a factory warranty in your life.
No, I've just bought it. Man. Yeah, would you like to buy the warranty on this for $14.99? No, it's not going to make it that long.
So do you find it more inhibiting or prohibitive when you need something done that you absolutely know you could do yourself, but just for sweat equity, time, and money, do you still hire someone else out to do that? Do you let them do their thing? Do you work with them on it? Or do you still try to do everything yourself?
No, yeah, that's a delicate dance. And I think what you're driving at is something I'm going to agree with. There are experts, there's subject matter experts that are really dialed into one thing, and they are good at one thing. And you're doing yourself a disservice because the one commodity we can't get more of is time. So even though you may learn lessons along the way and you may broaden your horizons and become a greater jack of all trades, you are losing time in that process. That's what you're exchanging. So there is an exchange rate of time. Let's say video production. I know it's becoming more and more common to have these services to edit videos or to help with audio and things like that. If you like to make and you like to make YouTube and see yourself on camera and you hate editing videos, pay somebody else to do that. Get your capture your time back and use that time to come up with more ideas and come up with new things to do.
And that was one of the biggest things whenever I was teaching my 6-week classes in the community college. I would tell people straight up, like, listen, when we're done with this, a few of you all are going to be producers and Cameron that, and then the rest of you all are going to understand how to hire somebody. That's what I want you to be able to do.
Yeah, and so like I cut my own grass because I enjoy cutting my grass, and I think there's something with there are some things you have to do because it gets you in touch with, okay, I know I've noticed this fence board is loose, or maybe there's a little pothole here the dogs may trip in, and you only so you need to maintenance your own saw so that you can really tell, hey, it's time for a new blade, or you know, this or that. So there are some things that maybe you would rather pay someone to clean the toilet, but you know, you got to do some things yourself. But in that vein, yeah, I'm all about make sure that you're getting the most out of your time.
Yeah. So excellent segue on subject matter experts. Man, it was like you teed that one up or something. So I do want to talk about the different production points, you know, all the way through the process.
Well, what's awesome is, and you guys will see this in some of the upcoming videos, the whole reason I started this endeavor, and I'll tell a little bit about the origin story without, I'm trying not to name drop on it, but there were people at Workbench Con who pretty much kicked me and said, go do this. There's nobody else who does it. So you know, you can go to Matty Huja, you can go to Peter McKinnon, Hayden Hillier-Smith, the Cinefilm guys, you know, there's tons of places for you to learn video production, but they are casting a wide net. My channel is geared towards makers, woodworkers, metalworkers, sewing. As if you're a maker trying to do either DIY content or look at me content or lessons, I'm here for you. Now, what was cool, what came from the editing episode, one of the things I talk about are Foley audio, because one of my Kickstart guys who's super famous for speeding up time-lapse shots and having that chipmunk sound, I show in my video,
you can name drop him.
Yeah, I do a video with fast and slow motion, and the audio is perfect. And I teach people how to do Foley audio. And so I'm going to start selling Foley audio or have it as a Patreon add-on to get these perfect, with my $3,000 Sennheiser shotguns, get that perfect sound.
I think that's a value that people are looking for, because early in our podcast, we were very Foley heavy. We did a transition where I wanted to introduce that, hey, this is a change in segments. Our podcast is a little different. We only do a segment on the guest. The middle third is on the guest. And we bookend that with a what have you been up to and a more focused conversation. Because in my mind, people listen to the Howard Stern show for Howard Stern. The guests are a bonus. And I wanted to drive consistency that Dean, Christy, and Austin were here every week, and the guest was an add-on. So I wanted to make sure that we had a highlighted section. And the other part was I want the guests to tell their story, and it'd be them talking, not us. Oh, well, you did that. Well, I did that plus one. So that was something I really tried to drive. And all that to say, we used Foley's in the beginning. I downloaded all the Adobe options, and it was cumbersome to go through hundreds and hundreds of Foley's in different files and go, well, this one's a saw, but it's not the right kind of saw. Or, you know, I guess metal dragging across the ground is appropriate for what we're doing. But if I had something that was more focused towards my work or our work, it probably would have stayed.
Nice. That is horrible. Absolutely horrible interject. We were having a serious moment, and here you come with that crap. So in this, in the post-production video, so it's the very last one uploaded to the Joe Jacks YouTube, I explained that, okay, you do your shots, you do them in slow motion, go back and do a few of the exact same action at different speeds. So say you're using your miter saw. You've got sacrificial pieces of wood, do
Right.
it slow, do a normal chop, do a sliding chop, and do it 5 or 6 times. Then save that stuff, because you're not going to upgrade or change your saw per se. It might be different wood. So do a recording with oak and with Paduk and with whatever, so that you have that. And then another template on joejax.com is the shot list template. Take the file name, save it, put that into your, if you're an Adobe person, you can have the essential audio panel and your library, and all of that stuff just lives in the application for you to drag in one at a time as needed.
Yeah, and I think one of the benefits you're asking, is it worth it? And a lot of the stuff that you do, and you can name drop me, that's okay. That I told you that you should do it, right? So you have the storyboard, right? And that kind of goes into our pre-production discussion. And one of the takeaways that I had from your class, in fact, you had sent me that template early on, and I filled it out for one of my videos that I did, and it did help me frame up the way that I was going to shoot my video. Typically, I go into editing not knowing what the video is going to look like. And there's just so much extra work that is now, instead of shooting 2 hours worth of video and trying to edit down into, and hopefully I'm not stealing all your bullet points, but taking a 2 hour, 2 hours worth of video just to have a good shot. And this is something that I learned in doing video for our church. I do a lot of B-roll footage for our church. And that's really, I think, what has helped me with my content creation, is having a different visual style. But in there, they say, don't be the 20-second guy. You don't want to take 20 seconds of B-roll. You need to be 10 seconds or less. And because at the end of it, you're probably only going to use 2 seconds of that 10-second clip.
Yeah, so when I tell people that 10 seconds, do the 10 seconds, because a cut is 4 seconds. You need 2 seconds to make sure you have your shot established. You have your 4 seconds of content, and then you have 2 seconds of buffer on the back end, just in case you move your camera, bump it, or somebody is going across your shot.
Yeah, and I've found that when I'm doing my, I've started to do a lot of panning shots in my content, and I always am clipping out that front end and back end, and you can always tell the difference between someone who is not used to that style, because their shot starts static and then it starts ramping into it.
And one of the things that when I was at Workbench Con in the second day, when all of these people, I went, I'll tell you the story soon, I promise. But as I was saying, okay, let's do this, I tell people, don't start a YouTube channel until you have at minimum 25 ideas. Now, I just heard you guys talking about the 20 a minute ago of 20 episodes, but I don't start until you have 25 ideas, because you're going to trim out a lot of those. I ended up by the end of the second day, I had 42 video ideas, concrete. I am actually going to do this. And there is a 6-part series to what we're doing here at JoeJax. The first one, what we're in now, is taking the boot camps that I do at Maker Camp, Workbench, Haven, Nation of Makers, like all those. I'm taking that boot camp, turning it into individual videos. There's going to be about 6 or 8 of those. Then we're going into the tips and tricks videos. I hate calling them tricks because they're just principles of here's how to shoot. Then we're going into reviewing content. So right now, behind the scenes, makers, and I'm talking people with millions and millions of subscribers, they consult with me. They contract me out for a certain price we'll talk about, but they get 50 minutes and 2 videos. They send me their absolute best 2 videos, and I watch them intently, and I rip them apart and tell them how they could have done stuff better. Then the next one is, I'll go ahead and name drop. So Jimmy DeResta is who kicked this off for me, because Derek from Malden was in one of my classes, and those 2 guys are who did this. And then John from Lincoln Street, I mean, I'll start crying because I was crying in this class. And Sedge from Festool and Ben from the Festool podcast and Jason Bent. I mean, it was this ridiculous serendipity that I was just going up there to hang and do my class. And the first night, Jason introduced me to Jess from Crow Creek Designs and Festool Sedge. We all went to dinner that night, and I'm just unloading information on these folks like, oh, you know, you could do this, you could do that. And I'm helping Ben with their podcast, with the Greenies podcast. And then Eric Gorgeous from A Craftsman, he was there at dinner, and we got to talking about motorcycles and cinema cameras. And like you guys said, I'm not the best at this. Like Suman Sarkar, his cinematography, unfreaking believably beautiful. Like his ASMR Instagram, like I'm getting goosebumps thinking about some of Suman's videos. Once Upon a Workbench, like he's shooting on a C200, C300, and like he's got a cinematography background. Like these guys are better at it. So I know I'm not the only one in there. Let's go back. So the fourth step is big makers. So this was Jimmy's idea. Jimmy wants to give me his old videos that didn't perform well on his channel, and I'm going to do a director's cut. I give him the director's cut to re-release, and then on my channel, I do the behind the scenes of how I fixed this old content that you can't reshoot, and maybe he doesn't have all the footage. How do you make lemonade out of lemons?
Sure.
And then there's the consulting side where you can pay me to do the consulting privately, or it's free if I can turn it into content for my channel. And then the sixth part is, you know, Tinker It is my other business doing makerspace stuff. I'm going to do videos like you all in your style, and I will have one camera doing the how to make a box, and then I'll have another camera back meta showing how that production is done from soup to nuts. So that's the 6 parts of the Joe Jacks initiative from WorkbenchCon 2022.
It's so funny. I think another thing I'm known for in the community is not necessarily making, it's advice. Like I always have advice for people, and I don't know where it comes from. You know, those that can't be coach, I guess. And so you know, you were saying something. I just want to echo a message. I have a hard time with the term "the best." I hate the term. I hate the term. You know, I'm not the best, and I can't. And I don't think you lack for confidence, but I'm sure there's someone listening that needs to hear this. Yeah. All you have to do is put forth effort. I mean, there's so many eyeballs out there that just a small fraction to appreciate what you're doing is still a massive audience. And you don't have to be the best. I think the best is a misnomer, because the best to me is not the best. The best fitting shirt for me is not going to fit Matt the best, you know, back to clothes. But I'm just saying the car that I think is the best is probably not, you know, I need something that can handle these Houston roads. Joseph's in a different driving environment. The best car to him is something totally different. But we get hung up on the best. Oh, well, I'm not the best, so why even try? Well, why not? You know, there's only one trophy, but that doesn't mean you can't, because what happens is when you put forth your effort, you know, and you really put forth a trying, over time you build up a collection of skills that put you in a unique position to capture an opportunity. And that's what you had, was you may not have been the best cinematographer, but you had all this experience and exposure and these collection of skills, and you found yourself in a serendipitous situation where your background allowed you to capture that. And that's what it is.
I felt like I had a purpose. I felt like I had an audience. And this is what I'm telling to my viewers and my customers, my clients. If you love what you do, go do it. If you want to flip burgers, be the world's best burger flipper, and you'll have a show on Food Network. I am a maker. I'm a video maker by profession and by trade. And I found a niche with you all that I can provide this service. And I have been so unbelievably welcomed in the community that I want to keep making as much and as long as I can.
I'll say this, that we all follow channels that are the same niche, right? We are following woodworkers, and I don't need to know how to plane a board. I don't need to know how to joint or do any of these common woodworking techniques. And so, but these are the people that we follow, right? And so we fall into this like, okay, just keep swiping, keep swiping. So I think when I sat in that class, and Trey, who we had on the last couple episodes, him and I were in the class together, and we're good friends. And we walked out of that class, and everybody else walked out of that class, and it's exactly right. Everybody was saying that was the best class because it wasn't. We were learning something totally new that we were thirsty for. We didn't know that we were thirsty for it, and everybody. You know, you can make good woodworking content, great, but you're going to be just like the next guy. And so what's going to separate you from the pack? And a lot of what we took out of that was the setup, something that, you know, I'm going to go ahead and take your punchline, and you can drive it home if you want. But you and I had talked about, you wouldn't go into the workshop, right? Yep. Without having a plan. So why don't you talk about pre-production there? I know I was going to steal your line, but I feel like go for it.
I'll tell you. So think about this. You know, we're all makers. We make whatever. In my videos, I use the box example. So let's just say, equate the box to whatever it is you're doing, a cutting board, whatever. So you want to make a box. If you wanted to make a box, no good woodworker, no crap woodworker would go into their shop and just start grabbing wood off the shelf and gluing it together and making random cuts. You would draw a picture of that box with some measurements, and then you would make a cut list of, I need 4 of this size. Well, that first thing is called a storyboard. The second thing is called a shot list. If you go into your shop without a plan, just like if you don't know where you're going, any road will lead you there. Just the act of being purposeful in what it is you want to do, that's it. So I had a note I wanted to go back on storyboards. I know people are afraid of storyboards. Well, guess what? Your camera roll is the perfect storyboard. When I teach storyboarding, I say, go out and tell a story with your camera, just like an old handyman article that was teaching you how to do something. Mm-hmm. They don't have pictures of them pulling wood off of the shelf. They don't have pictures of them cutting the wood. They have pictures of the wood changing shape. That is all you need.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask exact that. Just how detailed do you think people need to get, Joseph, down to a script, or where do you draw that line where, okay, here's a comfortable spot, anymore is too much?
Before he answers that, if I can just,
I'm getting fired up.
I know, and I can tell, and that's why I'm like, let me get this in because I won't ever get it in. But it's when you watch Netflix, and they could show, okay, I got off work, and the next shot could be you're at home. But it blends the two together. I'm getting off work. I'm getting in my car. I'm turning the ignition. And if you consciously write that out, for me, when I actually storyboarded that whole action out, it got me to think about things I would never have taken video of before. Tying my shoelaces. That indicates, hey, and it's things that people aren't doing in their shots. And it tells a story. Even a panning shot of your feet while you're walking around the shop can tell a story that you're putting in miles around the shop, that you're busy, you're creating sawdust. And so that's kind of where, I felt when I was doing
motivation.
That.
It's called your motivation. So every shot should have motivation to get to the next scene. So take, the videos that I've been working on, where I think the last one in post-production was 17 tips to be a better editor. if you watch it, the script is one giant run-on sentence. So as I'm finishing this thought, I am prefacing the very next thought. You need to have what is the motivation to get from here to there? Why do I need to do whatever's next? So when you're asking about how much to storyboard, and let's go through the 4 main pieces of pre-production. So I do in rules of 4. I know rules of 3 are what's supposed to be, but there's 4 boot camps that I do: pre-production, production practicum, production equipment, post-production. Inside of pre-production, you have your outline, storyboard, shot list, and script. So let's start with the outline. My assumption is that you've already brainstormed this video. By brainstorming, I am getting all of my random ideas, good, bad, whatever, out into a piece of paper just so they're out of my head and I'm not going to lose them. Then in my outline, I organize them 1 sentence and usually by shots, and you put the letter and the number, just like when you were in 7th grade and you learned how to do an English outline. Your intro, tell them what you're going to tell them. That's whatever your intro is. And then you tell them, then your wrap up is tell them what you told them. So in the tell them section, it's how do I get from here to there? You have to define your avatar. So Matt became my avatar when I was building this, mostly because he was the most interested. And so when I write scripts, I write a lot of them towards Matt and a few other makers. And so there's an assumed knowledge that they have. If they have the assumed knowledge, I skip whatever that is. So if they're woodworkers, they have pulled wood off a shelf. They've worked a miter saw. They've worked a tape measure. You're not film students. You don't have to get every little shot.
Now, the one thing that I'll challenge on that is the audience in the world of people who have pulled wood off a shelf versus people who have not pulled wood off a shelf is vastly different. You know, there's a lot more. People are always surprised at how well like pallet furniture does. Well, there's a lot more entry-level woodworkers than there are fine woodworkers. And so whenever you snob yourself into, well, I only work with walnut, well, you've gotten rid of all the pine people, all the pallet people, all the Home Depot people. They're all off your list now. And so where do how do you keep some intrigue with those entry-level fans?
Well, and that's where it's so important to define your avatar, because your avatar will change. Just like I think on the Making It podcast, they talked about how, or even the Wood Whisperer, so many things changed when he went to Powermatic, or when, we expect you to be a Ryobi and Milwaukee person, and then you go into this upper echelon, you kind of lose people. Your avatar will absolutely change over time, but you need to define one in the beginning of, okay, right now, I'm just going to focus on people who have this level of competency, and I can skip the wood. Later, if I do a project that has pallet wood, big box pine, whatever, then I will put that if it's necessary. But in the beginning, you cannot be a shotgun when you first start creating content. It has to be a rifle with a scope on those people. Go ahead.
Absolutely agree. And I'll tell you why. My Instagram page grew dramatically when all I posted was stamps. When I drilled down and all I posted was stamps, and I posted the same style photo and the same, I might have had some different decor, but it was the same general photo. It was very recognizable. This was one of Dean's posts. I got tons of likes. My page grew dramatically. And you know what killed my growth? Christmas giveaway. My charitable, I did a Christmas ornament thing where if makers made ornaments, they sent them in to me. I would buy gifts to donate. We donated over $1,400 in Christmas gifts last year. We got 55 or 60 ornaments in.
It was so
It was a big highlight for me. As soon as I stopped posting only stamps, my growth stagnated. And so there's definitely something there to don't be a shotgun artist. Make sure you know what your focus is.
Well, you drove into a niche there that people, and it was a need, right? So just like Joe has, he's fulfilling a need, a void in the maker space, which is content creation and how to level up. And Dean, there was nobody. I mean, there was a couple people doing, branding type stuff, but nobody was really doing the stamp thing. And I understand why, because it's a long process. I bought the stamp stuff, and I still have yet to make a stamp because I just remember watching you make them, and I was like, that takes way too long. But yeah, I mean, you're fulfilling a need.
Yeah, I grew up in a small oil and gas town in South Louisiana, and it was impressed upon me early that the guys with a lot of money weren't necessarily the people who own the oil and gas companies, because that was just one or two people. It was the guy who built the toolboxes or the pipe stands or sold groceries to the boats. The people who provided services to the industry did just as well. And so I always try to tell people that if you can provide a service, we interviewed a guy who had, I'm going to butcher it, it's a Hawaiian name, a Tana Nui. I can't think of it right now, but he did molds for epoxy pours. And it was because he was trying to sell epoxy cutting boards and couldn't fight through the market. But once he started selling the molds to the hundreds of people, who were trying to make these boards, he found something and grew. And so a lot of times the service that you can provide is also a gold mine.
We call this the Levi Strauss method. That's how Levi Strauss made his fortune. He was there in San Francisco during the gold rush, and instead of panning for gold and going after the gold, he rented equipment to miners, and not to miners, but to miners.
Right. And there were children out there looking for gold. Got it.
Yeah, he's all about the kid labor, Levi Strauss, kid labor. And so as he was renting this equipment, he kept noticing that the men coming back in had holes in the knees of their slacks. Well, denim was not jeans. It was just a canvas material, very stiff and rugged. So he started sewing that. Then he figured, why not make pants out of this? And now we have Levi jeans because of this. So that's what I'm doing is I tried making cutting boards. I've got a walnut one sitting here. I've got probably, 300 board feet, which I still haven't figured that whole calculation out, of slabs and things, and realize I suck as a woodworker. Why am I trying to do this? My niche is these people who brought so much joy to making me feel wanted and not pandering, because people are brutally honest even when you meet them in person, and it's awesome. Yeah. I highly recommend meeting folks in person.
On pre-production, I know we talked about setting up your shot and getting all that framed out and having an outline and all of that stuff. Yeah. If you've predetermined your avatar, which means that you're going to have to be selective and you're going to isolate people. I think a lot of times people, we want to, everybody wants to be a viral, sensation, right? Yeah. Which means you have to appeal to everybody. And I think there's a misconception. To be viral, you don't have to appeal to everybody. You have to appeal to a specific group. And this is one thing I talked about on another podcast about hashtags. My biggest performing video was one where I only put 2 hashtags on it. And that's because it drove the algorithm to narrow down the market of people to put that video out to. Because if you put 30 hashtags out there, if you reach your maximum hashtag level, the algorithm doesn't know what to serve up. And so if you are saying, I want to do, if it's hashtag pre-production, and there was somebody who's typing in the words pre-production, it's going to serve up that content to them. If your avatar is the person who is a beginner woodworker, then and you want to build, I'm pulling wood off the shelf, then are you going to build that into your storyboard?
Well, first, your when you define your avatar should be 5 steps before you're doing a storyboard, because your avatar is going to denote your brainstorming, your outline, etc. So when you do your avatar, that's how you decide, where am I on the infotaining spectrum? Am I informative or am I entertaining? Here's how to build a tricycle. Look at my 500 horsepower tricycle. So am I teaching something and I do this, and I'm actually going at Maker Camp. I'm going to have a box where people are going to put their sticker in, and I want them to write on a scale of 1 to 5 where they are on the infotaining spectrum. And I'm going to put the stickers in the background shot in the shop of where people are from informative to entertaining. To give you an idea, Jimmy DiResta is entertaining. He is not informative.
Right.
You have, and I wish I could remember the guy who can talk for 15 minutes straight, giving you like the inner workings of an engine, and there is no production value. That is informative. Dead center is Bob Claggett from I Like to Make Stuff. You're learning something and it's entertaining. The pinnacle, if you don't know about this channel, the pinnacle of both of them is Craftsman, without a T, Steady Crafting. That is the most
Craftsman,
entertaining. Oh my gosh, that is the most entertaining channel that is so informative and so entertaining at the same time. That, all right, I digress.
You know something he does? I want to get your take on this. Something he does, he wears gloves in his shot.
100%.
And it's a showmanship thing. It's not about him. You know, his voice,
have you
that's
watched
probably
him?
not his real voice.
Well, he's at Workbench Con somewhere. He is at Workbench Con because if you look in his picture of the stickers on the wall, the stickers there are only available at Workbench Con. Like those people are like how he got those has to be either at Maker Camp or Workbench Con. So he's one of us, and he's playing that part. But what I love about it. I'm sitting here giggling. So for those of you who do not know, because this is, we're doing the audio side of it. If you don't know about this channel, he is a puppet. Craftsman is a puppet. Nobody knows what he looks like, who he is. We know he's in Louisiana because of the Mississippi. I'm sorry. He was in Louisiana because there was Louisiana tags, but he's in Mississippi. He shops at Fred's Dollar Store and everything is about that. And when he does a hand shot, he always has black rubber gloves on. And in one of his videos, he takes off the black rubber gloves and he has a furry welding glove underneath there. And he talks about he wears gloves to keep his fur from getting matted up.
Yeah.
And it was not a woodworker or maker who told me. It was I worked at Adult Swim for many years. You can understand who it was who told me about this, but it was one of my guys said, dude, you got to check this out. Yeah. And I did. So with that, you've defined the infotaining spectrum, where you are. You've defined your avatar so you know what the assumed knowledge is of your viewer. So you know what you can skip over, but you also know what you need to do. So take your video of making the box. What can I skip over? What do I need to do? What is my motivation to get from here to there, from this box to the next one? And all right, so my pre-production class at Maker Camp is called How to Make Content 30 Times Quicker. Here's the math. Editing, on average, takes 6 times recorded footage length. For beginners, it's 8 times, but let's go with the average of 6. That means if I record 1 minute of footage, it's going to take me 6 minutes to edit that. The first time of watching through it, making cuts. And then as it goes in there, I'm watching it again as it's part of another cut. And think about how many times you watch that same clip. So if you are a long run recording maker who just does the security cam shot, number one, don't do that. Number two, in editing, you can take that footage, cut up just the clips where you're doing actions, export that out as raw footage, delete the rest of that, taking up hard drive space, and just save the good stuff.
So, Joseph, I'm a woodworker. I've got my hands on a saw. I've got my hands on a board. I have to put this camera somewhere. I mean, how do I go about not being the steady cam shot guy?
All right, so you have a phone. if we go back to our storyboard, visualize the final video. There are thousands of maker channels. You are not reinventing the wheel by any means. Even if you're Paul Jackman doing the After Effects stuff, his A-roll shot is still very similar. He's just editing it in a different way. So figure out what you want your style to be. To begin with, the camera needs to be at eye level, and it needs to be close enough to see the whites of your eyes. Now, we talk about creating a story, whether it be a how-to or what. Every story has 4 main parts: character introduction, rising action, climax, resolution. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down, and Jill sued and got a pump installed. So your box is, I'm here to make this. I need this box. Here it is. The conflict, your hero is either you making the box. Mm-hmm. The hero is the box being completed. The conflict is, can I get this box done? The conflict, if the box is the hero, is it fugly? Is it doing whatever its purpose is? Mm-hmm. So I am putting my camera where I want the viewer to be. You all have kids. If you were going to shoot video of your kids, if you were holding your phone at eye level, your viewer is an adult. But if you get your phone down at the eye level of your child, then the viewer is another child. So put the camera where the viewer needs to be to understand what's happening. That was a critique, not even a critique, but a bravo to Matt, that his composition of his shots, he has put the camera exactly where it needs to be to tell the story. If you're doing, like my client today, her very first YouTube video, 10 minutes long, could have been 2.5 minutes, because I don't need to see you gluing everything up, blah, blah, blah. So get your camera exactly where it needs to be. If you watch Steady Crafton, pick any of his videos and watch his composition of the camera is exactly where it needs to be. It only shows what needs to be shown to keep it going. Same thing, Brad Rodriguez from Fix This, Build That. He is making his shot composition exactly where it needs to be. So don't be a security camera unless for god awful reasons you want to do that. And I promise, even Jimmy, who does those types of shots, moves the camera around constantly to have it focused on whatever material is changing shape. So storyboard, go out, take stills, and those become the cells in your storyboard. The text part of your storyboard are the letters and numbers from the outline, so we stay organized. So as we're building our outline, we know that scene 2, shot A, part 1 is the first cut. Okay, well, that is a storyboard cell. On your storyboard, you're also going to add in any cues that you need. Is this a voiceover? Is this a talking head? Is the audio nat sound? Is it Foley? Is it whatever? Is there music? Is there dialogue? And write your dialogue on the storyboard. It doesn't have to be every single shot, because that's what the shot list is for. The storyboard is there to get your vision out of your head and fill in the gaps. Because if you thought right now, how do I get from wherever I'm listening to this, on the treadmill, wherever, how do I get from this to the bathroom? In your mind, you are not thinking of every single step and every door frame, because your mind fills in the gaps automatically. Well, that happens while you're filmmaking, and you don't realize until you're actually doing something in the editing that you missed a shot that your mind was erasing. So by doing the storyboard and visualizing every step along the way, you can make sure that you have all of the shots you need, none of the shots you don't need. So let's go back to my equation of if every minute of footage is 6 minutes of editing time, for every 1 minute of pre-production you spend saves 5 minutes of production time. So if I plan it out, and I don't storyboard everything. I storyboard maybe 4 out of 20 scenes in a video, but it's only the ones that are so complex in my head that I have to get them out before I forget what it is I want. And sometimes I storyboard with stick figures or phone, etc. And there's a pre-production video I have on Joe Jacks that explains this even further. The most important thing is, from my storyboard, I create my shot list. And this is every piece of footage I need to tell my story, nothing more. So when you go into your shop to make that box and to shoot you making that box, you only shoot the shots that you need. And when you hit record and you get your 10 seconds of footage, or 15 or whatever it is, at the very bare minimum, you, on the shot list, there's a little section, and you can make this yourself in Excel. There's a little section for the file name. If you're shooting on your phone, just write the date and the time. That way, when you go into editing, you don't have to hunt for stuff. It is literally an assembly list of, okay, this shot is this, drag into there. This shot is this, and you only have 10 seconds. So you're not having to watch through all this clip. You have only recorded the exact footage you need. And if you have to do multiple takes for coverage, your shot list has room for that information too.
I'll say that's where I actually failed. I was great on the storyboard portion, but where I failed was I had the storyboard, I got the shots that I wanted. I didn't leave myself enough margin, right? I didn't leave empty storyboard shots. So as I was recording, I was like, oh, I probably should put this in there. So I was, drawing little arrows all over the storyboard, during the whole shooting process. But where I failed was going back, and I'm pretty sure that would have saved me a ton of time. Hey, by the way, Joseph, the shirt that you're wearing, we talked about in the last episode.
I had to go dig this out of the closet because on my way home from games tonight, I heard you mention it, and I'm like, oh crap, I ran out of them.
I need to get one of those.
To see, I can't wait for you guys to see the one that I made for Maker Camp. And I had to nod that people are on Instagram, but I am going to make more of these and put it in the store.
For those of you who are not watching the stream on YouTube, you need to check this thing out. Maybe we'll get him to stand up at some point during the episode. He's doing it now, folks. Oh my gosh, here it is. So this is one of the best shirts. He wore this shirt when we were at Workbench Con, and on one side of his shirt, it has a phone in the portrait mode, and it says, "This is a phone." And on the other side, it's in landscape, and it says, "This is," and you got to stand up again so I can see it. So I'm going to mess it up.
It says camera, man. Phone, camera.
Phone and camera. Yeah.
It's super simple. Phone, camera. This is made on a Cricut. Like, the phone is starting to peel apart here. I did it for Workbench Con. My other shirt says overhead cams show my bald spot. And I just, I wanted something dumb. I didn't care about merch. And then it blew up. And people are like, where can I buy it? And I'm like, crap, now I'm going to have to make these things and sell them.
That's
What's funny, when you sat down, I saw the shirt and I went, oh, haha, I saw that graphic recently. And I didn't put it together that it was on your page. I saw it. I was like, oh, man, that's popping up all over the place. I just saw that graphic.
You should definitely get on Shopify, so you can just do direct to garment or direct to print garment thing. So anybody that can buy that shirt can just send it straight out.
So I don't know how much I can talk about it here, but my business partner, my best friend who's going with me to Maker Camp, has a business that he's working on called Made by Computers. And he is interacting with the AI platform to create custom T-shirts based on your chat prompts.
Wow.
And the art he is coming up with is absolutely gorgeous. So he's hooked up the backside of my Squarespace site for Joe Jacks to do drop shipment stuff. But it kills me that the prices are so expensive. I've got to charge $30 a shirt to turn an $8 to $10 profit, where I've taught screen printing. I've made hundreds of shirts, and to make your own silk screen and that super simple. Buy bulk of the shirts. I live in gray or black, so I'm going to have some for sale after Maker Camp of this stuff.
Yeah, when I had shirts printed up, I used, I can't think of the name of it now, but I had, Custom Ink, and I had a bunch of shirts made up, and I ended up with probably easily a dozen mediums that nobody purchased. And so I was just handing those out like candy, whenever I could, because I see somebody that's a little bit smaller and I'm like, hey, you want a shirt? Never mind that it says team on the back as Voltner Woodworking with my bearded logo and then team on the back. But hey, they're part of the team now because they happen to be a size medium.
So I went and got mine from Custom Ink. I'll tell you two parts of this because this was a cautionary tale to anybody wanting to actually print their own shirts. Did the design, loved it, uploaded it. As I'm selecting the sizes to take with me to Maker Camp, it is 5 larges, 15 extra larges, and like 4 2Xs. No mediums, nothing like that, because I know, we're American. The other thing is the redesign of this shirt has a phone in portrait, and it says Instagram below it. Then it has a phone in landscape. And actually, it doesn't say the word Instagram because I had to take that off. So it's a phone in portrait with the Instagram logo, a phone in landscape with the YouTube logo, and a phone in the trash can with the Facebook logo.
I love that. That's so great.
So Custom Ink kicked it back to me, and I'm trying to get these things before we fly out because I'm flying up early to do some stuff with the team up there. And they said, you can't, that's logo or copyright infringement or whatever. They said, I can't use the logos. It has to be 50% different. So I went into Illustrator and made the logos out of vectors and just primitive shapes. The Facebook I got away with, the Instagram I got away with, but the YouTube, because it's just a triangle in a rectangle, I couldn't hit that 50% mark. So I made it into the Skip logo that's on YouTube. That was the closest I could get. I didn't brand it, except at the very bottom of the t-shirt is the Joe Jacks logo, just so I have something on there, but I wanted people to be able to enjoy it just as it is and still give them a little bit of a nod.
What have you thought about the pre-production discussion so far? There's so much more that Joseph shares on his channel on pre-production. Both his and Dean's information will be in the show notes below, but don't hit record just yet. I know that you're probably anxious, just like I was when I left Workbench Con from Joseph's class, to hit record, but don't do it just yet. There's so much more that we're going to be talking about in the production equipment side of things, and then even post-production. And that things that are going to potentially save you more time during your production shoot, and you might be able to do it in 1/10 of the time. Thank you guys so much for being here on the podcast. I've had a great time. I know the listeners are going to get a lot of information out of it. I can't wait to talk to you guys in next week's episode when we're going to hear more about the production equipment setups. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
And it was great thank you so much for having us. This has been an exceptional time. This has
so good.
Just been an exciting time.
Yeah. Thank you very much.